Okay, so we're going to be painting these skulls, making them look realistic. Your space should be set up like so. You should have your round brush, your flat brush, a skull, your watercolor palette, and you should also have water and a paper towel. Paper towel is very important. We're going to be learning 2 techniques for this painting, and we're going to be painting from observation. The 2 techniques are wet on wet and reductive painting. So what you're going to do first is you're going to do this along with me. You're going to take your flat brush, dip it in the water, and just coat your paper with water. You don't want puddles, you just want a nice even coat of water. It'll go from like left to right and then top to bottom. Make sure you get the whole paper wet. You got to do this quickly. If it starts warping too much, you can put a little bit of water on the back and that'll help flatten it. And then turn it back around so that your name needs to be on the back of the paper, not on the side you're painting on. Alright, give me a thumbs up when you're done with that part. You're following along? Good job. Just, wash it in your water. We're going to be adding a color to the whole background anyway, so it doesn't, if you have some color coming off your brush, that means somebody didn't clean their brush. It's okay though, because in this case, we will be painting the whole paper. Okay, for step 2, you're going to take that same flat brush because we're going to be filling in areas. Flat brushes are best for filling in areas. And you're going to use brown only. You're going to get load your brush with a lot of brown paint from your palette, from your watercolor palette. We're doing something called monochrome. Monochrome means one color. Mono means one. Chrome means color. Monochrome is a painting where you use just one color. And you load your brush with brown and then just paint the entire paper brown. This is called making a ground for your paper. Not ground like the ground you step on. A ground is a background color that you work as a base for your painting. So what we're doing now is called making a ground, creating a ground. And we're just using brown. Sometimes it takes a couple coats, that's okay. You want your paper to be pretty wet. And then when you're done with that, put your brush in the water bucket because we'll be switching to something else. And you'll do your best to keep up because I need to move on quickly, otherwise it's going to dry and the whole thing won't work. Yeah, you want the paint to move around on there easily. If you see brush strokes and it's kind of dry, you need to re-wet your paper. The paint during this time needs to be movable for this to work. Alright, thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, so the next part, We are going to paint these skulls in front of us, but to create drama and chiaroscuro, right? Remember we learned about chiaroscuro? What's that mean? Dramatic lighting. You're going to use a phone from your table, and you're going to turn on the flashlight, and you're going to prop it on one side of the skull, so you get drama in your painting. Drama. Okay. So do that. Is put your skull in a place where you see it like the front view or 3/4 view, and put a light on one side of it so you get high contrast of light and shadows.
Where do you keep your skulls? Because there's not enough at the table.
Oh,
there's no more.
There's no more.
Oh,
See if
okay.
yeah. See if you can just join somebody. I'm sorry. I'm being blinded by all these flashlights. Okay, thumbs up if you have a skull that's lit and you can see dramatic lighting. Drama. Now,
I do not have
no drama. Leave the drama to the llama. And chiaroscuro, Baroque art. Okay, what you're going to do next is using your round brush, you're going to take the brown paint and do a very basic outline of the form of the skull. It's going to change, so if it's not perfect, it's okay. Make it fill the page, make it big. Look at the angle. Remember how we used contour line to help us observe things? Well, you're applying that now. Observe the angle of the skull, like how it's rounded up top. The angle of like the cheekbones, the angle of the jaw, the angle at the bottom. Yep. The only color we're using today is brown. No, I just used more color. It's not dark. It's just, I just dipped it in more color. Okay. Outline the form of the skull, the shape of it. And then put in the features, like where you see the openings for the eyes. Remember, they're not round. They're probably a more interesting shape. And I'm using the round brush for this. Alright, just a general outline. It's going to be blurry. That's good. That's fine. If it's not blurry, it means your paper's not wet enough if your lines aren't blurring out. When you have a basic outline like that, put your brush in the bucket. And then what you'll do next, it's hard to, when you're doing something like this, it's hard to pause because if it dries, it's not going to work. Once you have the outline done, look up here. You're going to take a piece of your paper towel, okay, like a little wad of your paper towel, and you're going to look at your skull, and you're going to squint and look at the highlights, and then you're going to take your paper towel and you're going to push. Don't scrub your paper, you'll ruin your paper. You're going to kind of stamp in where you see highlights. You see what I'm doing up there? So for me, it's this side of the right side of the skull. And we're going to refine, refine, refine. So this part's going to be really kind of general looking. Right now you're looking at the big shapes and big highlights. After you do that, you're going to keep refining, and we're going to add shadows too. So that's really general. Now I'm going to go back and add more paint to my brush and go in and start painting in some shadows too. And then I'm going to keep doing that back and forth till the skull looks complete. when you're doing this, I want you to think of the shadows and highlights as shapes. It helps if you squint at your subject. In this case, it's the skull. If you squint at it, it makes the shapes pop out. So what we're learning here is how to make something look three-dimensional using value.
You said go over it again?
Go over what again?
When you dab it with the paper towel, what do we do?
After you dab in the highlights, then you go back with your round brush and start putting in shadows. And then you just go back and forth and refine and find the smaller highlights and smaller shadows, and you keep going and going and going until you get all the details. So what I'm doing now, I put in some of my highlights. I'm going back now and putting in some of them. I'm not doing like all the teeth yet. I'm still working more generally. I'll go back and put them in later, like the detail of it. But I'm finding some more like shadows. Now I'm realizing, okay, right above that left eye, there's a shadow there that I missed before because it's smaller. Okay, once I do that, then I go back with another piece of paper towel, get another clean piece, wad it up, and then go back and find, stamp in more of your highlights. If your highlights aren't coming up, it means that your paper got too dry. I notice there's a highlight here. It helps if you want like fine highlights, you can kind of pinch it and use the edge like that, and you can get like lines. And what I'm doing, I'm not scrubbing, because if you scrub, you'll ruin your paper. What I'm doing is I'm just taking a wad of paper towel that's like wadded up like pretty tight, and then I'm just kind of stamping in where the highlight would be. I'm just pushing. Don't scrub on your paper, because your paper is really fragile when it has so much water on it, and you'll kind of tear it and ruin it, and you won't be able to, it'll look patchy and weird. You'll destroy your paper. Yeah, you'll see the skull start appearing. Okay, and then I'm going back now and getting just more detail. Remember, don't use white paint, it'll mucky it up. We're just using our paper towel to get the highlights. And this, this is when I'd go in and maybe start putting in details of like some of the teeth. scary up there. Your paper's probably not wet enough. Like, my paper's really wet. Huh? It's not wet. Yeah, alright, so if your paper's too dry, you can flip over your paper and just start again. Because I think, or you might be able to re-wet that same side and try again and see what happens, and if not, then do it again on the back. Just re-wet and like add, just like start over on that same paper. Yeah. Yeah, for this to work, you'll find like your paper has to be like soaked. And what I'm going to do to, like this side of the skull kind of blurred out because it was too wet. What I'm going to do is come in here and do some negative painting and stamp out this part right here of the background. And then I could go back and like refine that edge right there because this part, the left side of the skull is in shadow. If you see a cast shadow, you can paint that in too. Shadows, a trick for doing cast shadows, they're always darkest near the object, and then they get lighter as they flare out. So at this point, you should be working back and forth with highlights and shadows. Slowly, like, refining and getting smaller and smaller details. It should look still pretty blurry. Leave this one alone and see how everyone's doing.